Apple is the most valuable company in the world and its iPhones are its main source of revenue. Except for the state-owned oil company of Saudi Arabia, Apple is also the most profitable company in the world. But even though it earns and profits more, its main rival still has, globally speaking, more market share than it does. For 10 years in a row, Samsung has been the largest cell phone manufacturer in the world, and China is the country with the largest smartphone consumer market on the planet. In 2013, out of every 5 cell phones sold in China, 1 was from Samsung. The South Korean company was the leader, with 20% market share, but now the company has collapsed to less than 1%. Practically, you could say, in quotes, due to the scale of the Chinese market, that Samsung doesn't sell cell phones there anymore. But how did all this happen? How did it decline so quickly? What led to Samsung's failure in China? It wasn't that long ago that you and I, if you're over 20, were using or at least saw someone with a Nokia brick phone, the famous unbreakable cell phone. I personally remember my dad's LG phone, which even had a little antenna to get better signal. Cell phone technology has changed dramatically in 2 decades. What used to be just a device for making calls has now turned into a supercomputer that fits in the palm of our hand. That nostalgic snake game from old cell phones has been left behind, and the Android and iOS systems have grown exponentially since their emergence. Before the smartphone revolution, Nokia reigned in cell phone sales all over the world. With its decline over the years and the rise in popularity of smartphones, the scenario changed completely. Since 2013, Samsung A has led the Brazilian market. Apple clearly dominates in the United States. In Europe, the competition is pretty fierce, but Samsung still remains in first place. Now, entering the largest smartphone market in the world, things work a little differently. Samsung opened its first factory in China in 1992 with the main goal of using cheap labor for export, without major ambitions for the domestic market. But with the rise of the Chinese middle class over the years, a wide path opened up for multinationals to explore a consumer market of more than 1 billion people. Samsung wisely took advantage of it. It captured a large part of this market, reaching the top spot among the companies that sold the most cell phones in China. But in 2007, Apple caused a revolution with the launch of its first iPhone. Samsung then needed to create something new to go head to head with its arch rival. Its portfolio of cell phones had a reputation for being cheap and very generic. To solve this, in March 2010, Samsung launched the first Galaxy S. In just a year and a half, they managed to make the Galaxy line the #1 smartphone brand in the world. With that, in 2013, Samsung boasted about reaching over 100 million units sold of the Galaxy line in the past 4 years. One of those 100 million was mine. I still remember my favorite, the S3 Mini. But in 2014, a new revolution happened in the Chinese smartphone market, which led to Samsung's surprising failure in China. It's no secret that big techs only operate in China according to the rules of the Chinese Communist Party. The technological Cold War happening in the world today makes us believe, at least at first glance, that Samsung's downfall was due to political issues. But problems with the Chinese government had little or no contribution to its decline. As well explained by the channel Tech Altar, Samsung's failure in China was much more due to the rise of 4 new competitors. The first was Xiaomi. Even though it was founded in 2010, it quickly conquered the smartphone market with a very simple yet very powerful strategy. Basically, selling quality phones online without the costs of physical stores and practically at half the price made Xiaomi steal customers from its competitors. So, consumers in this segment who are looking for a cost-effective phone found the solution in Xiaomi. Huawei was the only one that managed, in a way, to react against this strategy by creating a sub-brand called Honor. Samsung, on the other hand, didn't give an adequate response. They didn't want to remodel their vast global portfolio specifically for China, and so it happened, losing their share of the market in the cost-benefit niche. Oppo and Vivo were two other competitors that grew very strong, while Samsung collapsed in the Chinese market. But they came with a different domination strategy. The focus was to take the market share that the others weren't paying much attention to. Both of them entered and explored the vast rural China and its small towns, focusing on opening physical stores, even if just a small corner shop, to sell cheap cell phones to lower class consumers. For that, they invested in huge distribution centers and good customer service, which was the weak point of their competitors. Especially Samsung, which had a team of South Korean expatriate executives who didn't deeply understand the culture of the Chinese hinterland. And finally, Samsung's downfall in China happened when it lost ground in the premium cell phone segment. Huawei and Apple dominate this smartphone niche where consumers don't care or worry about the price. And they are willing to go to a luxury mall in big cities to buy a cell phone. Apple launched its first major carrier contract in China in 2013, right when Samsung was the leader and was about to go into decline. So with a carrier contract that gave it great digital power. Besides that, at that time, it launched the iPhone 5 with a bigger screen which, like it or not, caught the attention of the Chinese. Huawei came with its Mate 7 and Samsung with the Galaxy S5, which was heavily criticized for being a flagship phone with a plastic casing. So it's clear to see that Samsung lost its dominance in the three main smartphone segments in China: the cost-effective ones, the low-cost ones, and the high-end ones. If that wasn't enough, in 2017, when the Galaxy Note 7 started having fire issues, Samsung issued a recall worldwide to fix the devices. Except guess where? That's right, in China, it was a shot in their own foot. Imagine being in China with a phone that made headlines worldwide, with the risk of catching fire at any moment, knowing that you'll be the only country where the brand won't do anything to solve the problem. It almost seems like the company wanted to ruin its own image with Chinese customers. Another problem that Samsung never wanted to or didn't properly solve was the absence of Google in China. Since 2010, Google has been banned there, and Samsung has its smartphones running on the Android system with services in a Google App Store. Unlike Apple, which, besides manufacturing its own smartphones, also has its own ecosystem with iOS, iCloud, and so on. Samsung has difficulties selling its phones with its own ecosystem, which ends up making its phones less attractive compared to its competitors. This, of course, specifically talking about China. Even Apple had to adapt its original ecosystem to the requirements of the Chinese government. But Samsung in this regard never made an effort to surpass its competitors, for example, by offering a quality app store.